Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Malkeith Mayhem. It's been about 3 months now since I've last posted a video, but I'm ready to start posting some more. I've gotten used to my Pyro spec, and that's what I'll be introducing tonight is the spec and all the gear and the rotations that I'm using now. I'm also going to be doing a series of videos after this, each one on a different advanced class and how as a Pyrotech to overcome that advanced class. Some are going to be harder than others, but I'll show all the tips and tricks that are involved with that. So stick around, let's take a look at this video, but to warn you first, there are no PvP kills in this episode, and that's just specifically for the reason that for the next 15 minutes I'm going to be going over in great detail the spec that I use and everything involved with that. So sorry to all my fans that were expecting that, but this is a informational video, more of a how-to if you will, like my previous Norse video. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and cut on to the video.
I've tried a lot of specs on the internet, and mostly they were great and everything like that, but the problem that I really found with them is they just didn't do the huge damage that I was looking for. They did a lot of damage, but not putting out the huge numbers like I was expecting. And at this late in the season, everybody's pretty much geared up with mostly War Hero or full War Hero, and there's quite a few people that are even fully optimized. So I was needing a spec and a gearing option that would close that gap. Alright, now before we get into our spec, I'm going to talk a little bit about buffs. Firstly, you're going to need a reflex stem. Also, you're going to need coordination. You'll need your hunter's boon, your class buff, and then you'll also need to make sure that you've got your combustible gas cylinder, and I'll just start referring to that as CGC. You need to make sure that your CGC is active. So what I've done is I've gone with this 2831 spec. Now as you can see here, I'm not taking Steely Resolve. In fact, this particular spec is doing far more damage than the 7331 spec that I see a lot of people running. I did climb all the way to thermal detonator because it's very important to set up that burst whenever you're using this spec, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I'll go ahead and provide a link to this tree, and I'll touch on this real quick while I did some things. Now, of course, in Shield Tech I took the rail loaders, but that's the only thing I took in Shield Tech. Over here in Advanced Prototype, other than just taking the puncture, I went ahead and also took Prototype burn enhancers. Whenever you see fire effects, whenever you see it worded like that, it's talking about your class dots. So incendiary missile and also the CGC dot, and all that is what it's referring to. Now up here I've taken, of course, the Prototype cylinders. That's part of the Firebug spec, but I took this in this particular spec due to the increased critical chance. So now my dots have a 9% chance, 3% here and 6% here, so it has a 9% additional chance on top of the tech critical chance that I have with all my stats. So I also took Hot Iron, and the reason for this is because instead of taking Intimidation where it only affects your dots, Hot Iron affects your Flame Burst. Now Flame Burst, I could get 6% additional damage out of Flame Burst, which does a lot more damage than one tick of the CGC dot or Incendiary Missile dot, where I would only get 4% here because I'm only having 2 points available. So it's just a much greater DPS increase using Hot Iron. Over here in my Pyrotech tree, what I've done is this is pretty standard to not use the integrated cardio package. But I went ahead and did go with the the gyroscopic alignment jets instead of the infrared sensors. I also chose not to take automated defenses. Thermal sensor override is a great skill, but the gyroscopic alignment jets, in my opinion, is much better. Didn't go with DGOS because you only want to use your energy shield for defensive cooldown. It's like the only one that we have if we don't have any Warzone Adrenals, and then that's available to everyone, so it kind of negates that. Also, we're looking at having rapid venting to decrease the cooldown on vent heat, and then we also have energy rebounder to reduce the cooldown on our energy shield. Okay, we go all the way up here to the 31 point for the thermal detonator. for the burst setup. And realistically, you're only going to be really able to do that every 18 seconds, even though it's on a 15-second cooldown, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now, what's really important about this spec is setting up your thermal detonator along with your rail shot, timing those two together so that way the damage is applied at the same time. And how this really works is what you'll do is whenever you apply your thermal detonator, you get one global cooldown to use before you have to use your rail shot. So we'll apply the thermal detonator, then we'll go ahead and use a flame burst, and then into rail shot. And it applies the damage at the very same time in a real-time scenario. I'm not a clicker, so it's really awkward for me to click these abilities, but I just wanted to show that. Now, thermal detonator's on a 15-second cooldown, so we could cast it every 15 seconds, but that's just simply not realistic. What will end up happening is it'll look more like we're closing in, we get our thermal detonator out there, then we apply our dot like that, and then as we're fighting and going on about our business, I procced it there. See, it's at 5 seconds whenever I last did that, so now we've got this up, we can go ahead and use it, and it's been about an extra 2 seconds at the end of that. So that's what I'm talking about, that we can really only realistically use our thermal detonator burst setup about every 18 seconds, even though it's on a 15-second cooldown. Whenever I'm opening up, I really don't like to use incendiary missile if I don't have to. It's high heat and it does little damage. It does put a dot on them, but it's just such a small amount of damage that I generally don't like to use it. I'd rather spend 2 cooldowns trying to use rapid shots. Rapid shots does do a lot of damage, and that's an important thing here. The reason why rapid shots does so much damage is because of the way that I'm geared. Now, what we're looking at here is all power augments on every piece of gear. I'm not quite done optimizing myself yet, but essentially what you want to do is like how I've got my gloves set up. You want the max power mod, and you want the max power and max surge enhancement. So whenever I say max power and enhancement and max power mod, is that you want to pick the mods and the enhancements with the smallest primary stats, the smallest amount of aim and endurance, and use the ones with the greatest secondary stat, which is for us power. In the eliminator set, which is what you should run using the Pyro spec, your 4-piece set bonus is that you get a 15% increased chance to crit with your rail shot. And that's really the only thing that you're looking for to crit out of your ranged table. Speccing like I do and gearing like I do, it still gives your tech chance very significant critical chance. As you can see here, the ranged critical chance is much lower than the tech critical chance. So it's not like we're going to be suffering real badly here for our dot damage and all of that kind of stuff. Now, what I'm talking about using rapid shots to apply the dot is every time you use rapid shots, you get basically four chances per global cooldown to apply that dot. That's why I like using it, and it does a lot of damage. You know, if everything crits, it does almost 2k. And the reason I say it does 2k if everything crits is because you apply the dot, which can crit, and then if all the little hits crit, that's 250 apiece. So it comes out to being a lot of damage. It also prevents you from spending needless heat. Whenever you get into range on your enemy, you can just light them up. I save my thermal sensor override. I've seen guides say use your thermal sensor override to open with your incendiary missile at range. I would say save your thermal sensor override for whenever you're hitting about 80% heat and you need that rail shot proc. What I'm talking about on the rail shot proc is, according to our spec here, we have a 45% chance while using Flame Burst to proc our next rail shot and refresh the cooldown and vent 8 heat at the same time. Now, Rocket Punch has a 60% chance to do that. So you want to use Rocket Punch, you know, initially to proc your rail shot whenever your rail shot is out of its 6-second internal cooldown. So we can only proc that free rail shot that vents 8 heat every 6 seconds. You want to try to use your Rocket Punch first, so always save that. Also, what I recommend to people is to go ahead and turn their cooldown timers on, because whenever this hits 11 seconds, that's whenever that internal cooldown is up. Because remember, we're on a 15-second cooldown. We proc the ability. We proc that refresh on the cooldown and that free rail shot whenever we initially use one of our abilities. So it's 1.5 seconds. So by the time we use rail shot and it counts down to 11, that's been 6.5 seconds. So then we're able to use our rocket punch in order to proc it and make it free again. Now, since it's only a 60% chance, it doesn't guarantee it, but more times than not, you'll be in a scenario where you're at 80% heat, you use your thermal sensor override, you trigger your rocket punch, making sure that we're, within our window after that 6-second internal cooldown. That'll give us 1.5 seconds and to vent, to dissipate some heat out of our heat bar. Then we have a very good chance of that rocket punch proccing our rail shot for free. If everything lines up right, we will proc it for free, and we use rail shot. Since it's free, we get another 1.5 seconds that that we're able to dissipate heat. And as soon as we use the ability, it vents 8 heat. So during that global cooldown, we're dissipating that heat after the 8 has already been removed, so it'll take you down pretty far, and then you can weave in a couple rapid shots. If you have to use an incendiary missile, what I recommend you do is use an incendiary missile, use a rapid shots in the interim while you're closing in, so that way you can kind of vent some of that heat back off. Also, what works great is if you have to use your incendiary missile at range whenever you're closing in, is to use it, apply your thermal detonator, then use your rapid shots in the interim before you use your rail shot. So that's what I would recommend there if you have to use your incendiary missile. But what I like to do is if I'm at range, back here, and I've got a long way to run, I'll go ahead and use a couple rounds of my rapid shots, and it generally by that time will proc it, so that way I can use my rail shot whenever I close in. And of course, in this scenario, when I have my thermal detonator up, I would go ahead and use it and follow through with that big old rotation. In a realistic scenario, you're going to find yourself overheating sometimes. Make sure to activate your vent heat. It's very, very important that we keep in mind that we have vent heat available to us. Use it liberally. It's on a 1 minute and 30-second cooldown. That's only 90 seconds, guys. So pretty much every couple thermal detonator rotations, we're able to use our vent heat, depending on our scenarios. How thick in the battle we are. So it's actually pretty nice to have that on a short cooldown. Thermal sensor override, really, like I said, try to save that. Don't waste that needlessly. Another thing I like to use is bombs. Always make sure that you have some seismic grenades on you. We've got kind of a limited thing going on here with our CC, since our carbonize is very useful because it's AoE, but it lasts such a short duration whenever you don't have the combat tech set bonus. So it's very nice to have your seismic grenades as a backup, but they are on a pretty darn long cooldown. The cooldown is 180 seconds, which is 3 minutes. So that's what we're looking at here. I've kept some abilities on my hotbar for situations such as preventing caps. Like I still got flamethrower on my toolbar, I've still got flame sweep on my toolbar, still got missile blast on my toolbar. These are all abilities that I use in order to prevent node cap. Also, I've got unload. Unload is a fun ability for me because a lot of the times what'll happen, and you're playing hut ball and you're chasing after the ball carrier, or you're up on the upper rail trying to get rid of a sniper or a healer that's up there free casting down on people, and man, you'll get blown down into the pit, you'll get knocked down into the mid or something like that, and you're stuck up there. Well, you're kind of out of flame burst range in most cases. I mean, flame burst does have a nice range on it. It is 10 meters. but you know, you're going to be a little bit further away than that. So what I enjoy doing here is, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hit them with an incendiary missile, then I'll put an unload on them, and that's part of our spec, because what we're looking at here is that whenever under rain of fire, it says that our rocket punch, rail shot, unload, and flame sweep all deal 9% additional damage to burning targets. The burning target doesn't have to be suffering from the CGC dot or the superheated rail dot. It just has to be on fire. So we can use incendiary missile for that. Now, really the only time I'll use that combo is if my rail shot is on cooldown, and I only need like an extra 5 seconds for my rail shot to come off a cooldown. So I'll go ahead and hit them with that incendiary missile. I'll put an unload on them, which actually does quite a bit of damage. And then, you know, maybe I'll hit them with a couple rapid shots, and then by then my rail shot will be off cooldown, and then I'm able to blast them with my cooldown again, or my rail shot after it's off of cooldown. So, you know, it really helps there. And you can also even line up your thermal det with it if you have that available. So even though you're not able to sit there and flame burst on top of them, using that rotation is a very low heat rotation for max range. I use explosive fuel pretty much on high priority targets only, and it's because it's on a 2-minute cooldown, and it does give you a 25% chance to critical hit. I also like to use it for quickly clearing people off of a node, so I save it for that case, more specifically if it's a capture the node type of game. I use energy shield very liberally because we have that energy rebounder skill that we spec'd into, which allows us to have a reduced cooldown as long as we're taking damage. Every 1.5 seconds, as long as we're taking damage, it reduces the cooldown on it. That does count for dots as well. So if there's a periodic damage on us and we're just running around and we're not even in combat, that's still reducing the cooldown of our energy shield. Sonic Missile and Neural Dart are our two taunts that reduce the damage of our target by 30% for 6 seconds. The AoE is, in my opinion, a little bit overpowered. It's nice to have. I'm not saying that I would like to see it nerfed, but I do admit that it is a little bit overpowered because you can fire that into a group of enemies that are attacking a healer, and it's pretty much good game from there. The healer can go ahead and get their HP back up. So make sure that you're using your taunts every chance that you get. If you're using your taunts correctly and you're actively using your taunts in a game where you're constantly on the offensive, you're looking at getting about 30k protection points at the end of the match easily. It's not that hard to do, and in fact I recommend it. Now our stealth scan, we did not take the infrared sensors ability, so our stealth scan is at stock cooldown. That's not so bad because we still do get a flame sweep, and flame sweep does have a chance to dot people up with your CGC. So if you're running down a hallway in a void star and you're running in the middle of a pack of enemies, go ahead and flame sweep them and try to apply that dot to them, because it'll apply that 50% dot, or I'm sorry, 50% movement speed debuff whenever you dot them up.
Well, I hope you guys have learned something from that long video. Again, I apologize for not having any real PvP kills in this video, but we're going to be seeing plenty of that with the upcoming series. Like I said, I'm going to be doing videos on each advanced class. That is to say that there's only going to be one video that covers like an assassin and a shadow, but I'll be talking about the differences and everything like that. So stay tuned. There's going to be a new one each week. I can actually promise that. And with that, I say peace. This has been Malkeith Mayhem, and I'm out of here.